Good morning and good afternoon. Today I want to share a updated article from Clever Real Estate. The article's titled "The True Cost of Buying a Home in 2024" by Jamie Dunaway Seal. They did an article similar to this, I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. They updated it and they've really expanded it, and it has a ton of information. If you want insights into what buyers are thinking, what kind of concessions they're getting, what their concerns are, what they're upset about, read this article. I put a link to it in my notes below, and I did a Facebook or a LinkedIn post summarizing the key content and giving you a link to it. Now, there is a ton of data points in here, a ton. We probably won't cover most of it, but I'm going to cover the parts that are most interesting to me. And you will find a lot of interesting data. And this will be great stuff to talk to your clients about, to talk to your referral partners about. So let's get into it. All right. The first main section of this article is what's the true cost of acquiring a home. And in this true cost, they included, and this is out-of-pocket costs for a buyer, home inspection, moving cost, buyer concessions, closing costs, furniture, fixtures, appliances, repairs, and renovations. And so there's quite an interesting part in here. The thing that caught my eye on this is, the first thing is on average, a new buyer will spend about $14,000 on furniture. That's right. The average new homeowner spends about $14,000 on new furniture and another $9,000 on deferred maintenance or small repairs, right? That's a lot. That's $23,000 on furniture and minor repairs. On average, they spend another $15,000 on renovations in the first year. Renovations being, large projects like kitchen remodels, bath upgrades, some landscaping, things like that. So as we start to get into the data, it's important that when we advise buyers of the cost into a house, that we talk about these average expenses, because what we're going to discover a little later in the article is what buyers were disappointed in and what they didn't know and what they wish they would have known, right? And so the article goes in there, what improvements did you make within the first year of buying your home? 36% said they painted the home. 31% said they either had appliances repaired or replaced. 27% added landscaping or fencing. 23% had improved the plumbing. 8% added finished floors. 18% had to do something to the electrical. It goes on. It lists the entire list. I won't cover it here. And then here's the next thing. And when I first read this section, I'm like, what in the heck are they talking about? And the title of the section is Concession Costs by Buyers. And then they list a dollar amount for concessions. But concessions are in the buyer's mind, like what did we concede to that we didn't want to do? So the number one concession is they agreed to pay the asking price or higher. 28% over a quarter, 28% paid more than they want to by paying the asking price or higher. 24% bought the house in as-is condition, even though they wanted to have some repairs done. 18% had to change the closing date from what they really wanted. 14% ended up not asking the seller to make repairs that they thought should have been made. 13% had to move in later than they wanted to. 11% waived the home inspection, and so forth. They have a whole list here, but you kind of see. So here's what me as the buyer felt like conceded and gave up that I didn't want to give. Interesting, right? I think that was really interesting. If you want to know on average or on typically where buyers got their down payment, and this doesn't come to 100%, but you get the idea. About 48% of them just saved it from their income. 17% took the money out of investments. 14% used inheritance. 14% withdrew it from retirement savings. 12% got a second job, and 10% used a gift. Now, By the way, I need to just let you know that this data comes from a survey that Clever did, and I think they got 1,000 responses. So they got 1,000 responses on this survey. So it's it's solid data. I think it's pretty solid data. Now, on the other flip side of the coin, buyers were really surprised about a few things. For example, let me see what this is. They break this down by Gen Z and Boomers. I'm not going to break it down by Gen Z and Boomers. I'll just give you the Gen Z numbers, and they're pretty similar. 70% of Gen Zers were surprised by the additional cost of buying a home. All those things we just talked about, the furniture, the repairs, the renovation, they were surprised. 70% were surprised. 66% were surprised by how much closing costs were. 53% were surprised if they had to actually dip in extra money from their savings or from their emergency fund. And 49% said they went way over budget on what they wanted to bring into the purchase, which led to them being somewhat unhappy. Now, at least on the positive side, let's start talking about what kind of concessions the buyers got. And in that data, let's just look at what the concessions are, because I found this super interesting. I'm going to skip this section on whether you paid less than what you wanted to or more than the home. You can check that out. But what concessions did you successfully negotiate with the seller? Here's what they did. Now, the first one is 93% of them had the seller pay your real estate agent fees. I don't want to call that a concession, but let's just say 93%. Now, it's not 93% of all sellers. It is the percentage of sellers that agreed to a requested concession. So that's different. Now, not all buyers made these concessions. It's just when the concession was made, what is the percentage the seller accepted? So when people ask for the furniture to convey with the property, 91% of the time, the seller accepted to some sort of furniture conveying. 89% of sellers, conceded to doing some sort of cosmetic upgrades. 82% of sellers, when asked, agreed to pay points to buy down the mortgage rate. 77% of sellers agreed to give a seller credit for closing costs. You can go and read the rest of it. It's a long list. But you know what's interesting? You know what? When sellers got kind of tight and didn't agree to it, they didn't like having to fix major things. They didn't like having to replace heating or air conditioning. Only 44% of the time did the seller agree to a major systems upgrade or change. They also were really resistant to extending out the closing date. Very resistant. Only 56% of sellers agreed to extend the closing date. Once again, there's so much data in here. You can pick which data set you like, which data set you think is most important for you to communicate to your buyers, what data set's most important for you to communicate to your real estate partners so that you can create the best advisory path for your clients and create the greatest satisfaction. Because that's what really happens. These surprises, this not knowing what happens, frustrates the buyer, and it actually, there's a lot of buyer remorse that's going to be reported in this because of the things they didn't know. So 79% of buyers compromised their priorities, which created frustration, by the way. And the top one is they bought outside their budget. They had to buy in a location they didn't want to. They didn't get the size home they wanted. The house wasn't move-in ready, and so forth. You can check out the whole thing. But nearly 3 out of 4 buyers have significant regrets about their purchase. Now, these aren't regrets over the long term. I think this is an emotional response, but all this reflects is the opportunity we have to better educate buyers what they're going to experience, right? And so, and I'm not, there's a whole list of 20 things. I don't know if I buy into all these things. I just know it just means that there's an opportunity for us to better educate our buyers so they can buy with confidence and joy. So they can have joy about getting their first house or their second house or whatever number it is. We want them to have joy, not frustration, not remorse. And so here's the thing, the question, this is a loaded question. I don't know if this is a fair question, but had you known the true cost of buying a home, how would you approach the process differently? Now that's a loaded question, right? You're asking for the negative answer. But some of the top answers are, I would have negotiated harder with the seller. I would have made lower offers. I would have looked at more houses. I would have planned for higher expenses. A lot of this is, displays their lack of understanding of the market, which just goes back to education, education, education. So I put a link to this article in my notes. I did a full, one of my longer LinkedIn write-ups on it. There's so much data. Hopefully you found this very, very interesting. I know I did. Hopefully you'll incorporate this into your advice, incorporate this into your partnership with your real estate agents if you're a loan officer. And with that, I hope you guys have a great day. Happy hunting out there. I look forward to talking to you.